Okay, we're live. Excellent.
And your dad is the first to join. Hey, Dad.
Is he? Ah,
Yeah,
bless
we
him.
were just discussing how your dad needs to meet my mom, at least as pen pals. They have something in common now. I mean, besides you.
Hey, everyone, welcome. Thank you. You're all joining as we speak. Welcome to the Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Shana's time, episode of a Paratrooper and a Yogi walk into a bar. Hello to my co-host, Shana Meyerson. You can find her at the Yoga of War podcast on YouTube or wherever you do podcasty stuff. And yeah, hand over to you. There you go.
Thank you. For those of you who like podcasty stuff, always great to see you here at the Paratrooper and a Yogi Walk into a Bar podcast. And there he is, our ally in anti-Semitism, Andrew Fox. I think you all know, but I'll say it anyway. That's Mr. Andrew Fox here on Substack and on X. Andrew, we had that strange confluence of basically writing very different things about the same exact topic within an hour of each other the other day. Start us off on this conversation, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, great minds thinking alike, clearly. So we were both clearly shocked by what happened in Utah last week with Charlie Kirk, and I have absolutely no interest in whether anyone approves or disapproves of the stuff he had to say. The critical point is nobody should be shot for saying it, and it doesn't need labouring. That point's been made enough times, but that led to a sort of broader debate, really, about where political violence was coming from. And really my position was that, bearing in mind I'm looking at America as an outsider looking in, I have very strong connections to the US. My father was born in Texas and my grandfather was a US World War II veteran, and I've been to 30 states, many, many times to America. So I know the country well. I think there are some initial observations that America is a far more violent country than almost anywhere in Europe, I would suggest. Even Ukraine, probably. There is an undercurrent of violence. Oh, that was a joke. Obviously, Ukraine is at war. That was me being flippant, as is my want.
That was totally lost on me. Usually I have the humor. I'm just like, wow, okay, it's worse than I thought.
That was too deadpan. But no, seriously, point. You do feel a kind of undercurrent on American streets in American bars that you don't feel in Europe. So there's that kind of baseline that's slightly higher. But my take was that looking in, it looks like a total shambles of a mess from here, with both sides coming out with incredibly extremist rhetoric. If I was in the States, I would have absolutely no idea who to vote for. I would find both right and left reprehensible. Frankly, the rhetoric coming out of the White House appalls me. The stuff that Democrats say is equally shameful. So yeah, I wouldn't sit anywhere on the political spectrum in the US, even though in the UK I'm solidly sort of centre right. If you had Reagan back, I'd vote for him all day long. I still think he was your best president. But yeah, there's just this increasingly spiral rhetoric, and the reaction to Charlie Kirk seems to have been to become more extreme on both sides. So everyone on the left is doubling down, everyone on the right is doubling down, and rather than take it as a moment to look reflectively at the discourse that's happening in politics in the US and say, this isn't particularly healthy for us as a society, people seem to have kind of reinforced their long-held positions, and nobody seems to see the other side as a worthy interlocutor. They see them as an opponent to be condemned rather than, a fellow countryman to be persuaded. And I just think that's a really dangerous place to be. So that's really where I was coming from, is that both sides are now massively spinning out. Like, look, even the rhetoric around the shooter, both sides are trying to say it's the others, and we haven't got any confirmation which way it goes yet. There's reports of transgender girlfriends and family saying the guy was a leftist. I've got a mate who studies the memes of the far right, and he's adamant that the stuff that was carved on the cartridges was all far right, Groyper, Nick Fuentes type kind of far right memes. So who knows at this point? I don't know. I certainly don't trust a word that comes out of the White House or Kush Patel, or director of the FBI. So it's a bit of a mess looking in. So that was my starting position.
Okay, so let me start by saying that I also, like you, consider myself to be right of center. However, 10 years ago, that would be considered significantly left of center. Okay, so this is the first thing we need to reckon with. Okay, Andrew, I think my primary argument is, or disagreement with you, is that we're talking about the far right having a problem. It does. But I'm saying that on the left, it's a populist issue, not a far left issue. You don't get hundreds of thousands of people marching across the country every single day, calling for death to Jews, calling for death to America, calling for jihad from a fringe ideology. So this is my first issue. But you alluded to in just now, but also talked about specifically, and in even as your thumbnail used, the House divided concept by Abraham Lincoln, right? And by the way, I would have probably voted for him today over Ronald Reagan if he were to run. But
well, bearing in mind, a House divided was originally Jesus, so the Jews can take claim for that as well.
I'd vote for him too, even as a Jew. I mean, he was a Jew. There's that, or a Palestinian, as they say.
No, that's just offensive. So no.
but they, not me, they. But okay, I digress. Here's the thing about the House divided, Andrew, and I speak as somebody from inside America. But it is true. I have great opinions about what's going on in the UK, but I'm always going to defer to you when it comes to what's actually going on in the UK. I think you have a really good finger on the pulse. It's not that, but we have to. I know this is a bad word ever since the idiots at Harvard and in all the places, MIT, Penn, uttered it, but we have to consider context. Okay, what was the House divided? The House divided was a House that was divided over slavery. Okay, we're talking about the abolitionists versus the slave owners. In the argument of this venerable president that we had, Abraham Lincoln, his argument was not the lion should lie down with the lamb and we should just accept our differences and make peace. The argument was we need to abolish slavery and the slave owners need to come to the side of the abolitionists, and that's how we become a house united, is when we share values and when we share morals. So right now, we are not talking about left versus right, Andrew. We're talking about calling for jihad, calling for death to America. By the way, but you can say whatever you want about the far right. They don't call for death to America. We're talking about extremist, I'll say it, Islamic revolutionary rhetoric versus extremist patriotism. Now, we know where extreme nationalism goes. Okay, so I'm not saying because I know in the back of your head, okay, well, that's where Nazism came from. That's not my point. I'm not denying what goes on the far right. That's been going on forever. Nobody denies it. And in fact, I was a speaker for the ADL for many, many years. 100% of what we spoke about was the far right, but we are facing a new reality. Okay, we're in the post 10 set. I'll even go back further. The post 9/11, post 10/7 reality, where are we supposed to make peace with the other side? I mean, Andrew, I will post things about the hostages. And the answer is go die Zionist baby killer. These are people from the yoga world. Okay, so we can't kumbaya our way out of this moment. We need to call out what's going on. And by the way, saying that in this incendiary environment, we should just make peace, which is the argument that a lot of people are making. I know that the governor of Utah was very measured in his statements. And yes, I think that's a great idea. Sure, I'm all for peace. Andrew, the fact that we have these conversations and for weeks now we have a lot of disagreements proves that we're both on the side of civil discourse. Okay, so it's not about that. But I want to know how saying the left just needs to make peace with the right and the right just needs to be more tolerant of the left is any different from saying that Israel should just make peace with Hamas.
I don't think anyone's made that argument. I think it's more about the rhetoric, and I think we're talking not cross purposes, but slightly different things here. So you're looking at it from a solely, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of Jewish perspective, where everyone is beating down on the Jews constantly, which is a fair point. And it's coming from one direction, with the exception of the Candace Owens, kind of Ian Carroll, sort of, and actually this is a point. Is left or right even useful at this point? I think we can point to certain left-wing things. We can look at economic policies on both sides. We can look at certainly some of the nationalist rhetoric. My position is patriotism good and nationalism bad. And I think what you have in the White House right now is unavowedly nationalist, which is really not a good thing at all.
I want to know why you say that. Because I could say, and I'm saying this not as a MAGA. I have never considered myself MAGA with caps any more than I consider Black Lives Matters with caps. But I do believe my Black Lives Matters and Black Lives Matter with small BLM, and I do believe we need to make America great again. So what do you see as getting dangerously nationalistic?
I mean, I would say go and look at Umberto Eco's essay on what he called fascism. You are fascism. And you've got, of the 14 elements of fascism, you've got at least 10 in the White House right now. I mean, that's one thing I'm really pissed off at the left for, is that we don't have a vocabulary to describe what we're seeing in the US right now. And that is an actual fascist as president. And I mean that in the traditional Italian 1920s sense, rather than the silly blue-haired dickhead. Everyone that doesn't agree with me is a fascist. But I think we genuinely have that extreme nationalism where alliances get shattered, where there is a kind of muscular kind of it's about us and nobody else and go screw yourselves kind of attitude. And the world is looking in at America right now and just looking and going, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? Like, it's insane. Like, you've handed the next century to China on a plate. Like, you're literally committing suicide in front of our eyes, and we don't really know what to do about it, if I'm honest. We're just looking at America like, what the hell? So, that's what I'm saying is right or left really useful in this debate, because you've got the you've got the green-red alliance, where you have an incredibly socially conservative Islamist movement, women in burqas, and absolutely no rights for anyone at all, combining with these ultra-liberal lunatics to take down the West, which is really kind of bizarre marriage. I mean, they both want to take down the West, and it's going to come to a point where the red-green will try and eat one another. And I'd imagine the green will win, quite frankly, because they tend to be a bit more violent than even the Reds are.
Please elaborate on that. Where do you see that breaking point coming?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's when they start taking actual political control. And, there's elements of that in the UK already, which is, again, worrying. We've got 5 Gaza MPs. They don't have any real ability to bring legislation in because they don't have any sort of majority whatsoever. But there will be councils where there are majorities, where certainly once they start bringing in more Islamist policies, the Liberals are going to go, what the hell? and that's where they're going to break down, I suspect.
I think personally, I think that we have to keep in mind that the jihadi strategy is hundreds of years behind and ahead. They have very, very, very unwestern, patient approach to all this right now. I'm about to write a Substack about this. Not right now. That wasn't a full sentence. But I think that their intoxication of the left is on its way to completion, and they're smart enough to know when they've won them over. And I think that it's only after they know, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years down the road, only when they know that they have consumed the left, that they will go forward with their efforts with actual Islamic jihad, political jihad.
Yeah, it's a ground up subversion. It's a ground up subversion. And Tom Blair, you go on, Trump gives commands to kill millions. Come on, read the history about fascism. No, stop. That's lazy. That's lazy. We're not talking about Nazism in the 1940s. We're talking about Italian fascism in the 20s. Go and look at Umberto Eco's 12, I think it's 14 points about fascism. So no, that's not what I'm saying at all. That's just a lazy comparison. But yeah, you heard of the horseshoe theory as well, where left and right on the extremes come around and they're basically the same. Like, does that even apply anymore? Because if you've got this super social conservative, super socially liberal alliance on one side, and on the other side you've got solid 1920s nationalism. Like, where does that horseshoe even work at this point? It's hard to even find that spectrum.
I think the answer, Andrew, first of all, I don't see it as a horseshoe. I see it as a circle, just as I do between love and hate. Total side note. I used to have like a friend that were couples, and they would go from, it was sick, literal fist fights with a man and a woman, like would fight with each other, to just insane lovemaking. And it was the first time that I understood how close, it doesn't matter the spectrum, the left and the right are, but you have to keep in mind that the furthest right is liberal, the furthest left is anarchist. It's not Nazism. There's further right is the liberal. And so when you take those two, it's very hard to discern at that point the right from the left. I think it's a circle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, going back to the point, you're talking from the Jewish perspective. Of course, that is almost solely left-wing aggression. But it's interesting when you look at the statistics over killings. If you look since 1975, at extremist-related killings in the US, first of all, you have to take out 9/11 because it just blows the statistics out of the water because there were so many dead on one day. But if you take 9/11 out of it, extremist killings in America are like 63% right wing, 10% left wing, and the remainder is Islamism. So it's interesting that the violence that we see in terms of rioting on BLM or Rodney King or wherever it was, that kind of violence tends to be left wing, and the actual murders like 2/3 nearly right wing. So it tends to go to a very different place. Neither good, neither necessarily better than the other, and arguably the mass scale riots cause more harm than just someone losing their life in some ways. But it's interesting how these kind of peaks work, and I think that's why January the 6th stood out so much, because it was an actual attempt at insurrection, and that's never been seen before on either side. So I think in America, certainly. So that's why that kind of sticks out to people, I suspect.
Okay. I think that this is the point of departure where my plane is definitely El Al. You can say that you can. Sorry, I'm taking notes over here. So anytime I look away, it's just because I'm writing down some notes. It's not like I'm like, ho hum, let me file my nails. But you're saying to take 9/11 out of it. Okay, fair enough. That was a mass casualty event that is innumerable. Here's the problem. You can't take 10/7 out of it, okay? Not only was this the inflection point where the left went crazy, but the data points that you're looking at, and I think it's because we don't even have the data points for 2024 yet, much like 2025, are 2023. When did the left go off the rails as far as its anti-Israel rhetoric? That was either late 2023, but we started seeing the immense violence in 2024. So, Andrew, I am not arguing about far right extremism, and I will never apologize. I think it's dangerous that the Jews are now looking to the right for salvation. I mean, dangerous is hardly the word for it. It's like, I know what's on the far right, so please don't think I'm being naive. But Andrew, we need to look at the moment. And everything changed on 10/7. I also want to say about my Jewish lens. I put it in quotes for no reason. I have a Jewish lens. I don't just have a Jewish lens. I have a Jewish lens, not with no ish added to it.
Not even a capital J and a capital L, just the whole thing in capital. Wow.
Straight through. But I think here's the problem, Andrew. In at first I heard it in my own head where I'm like, okay, Shana, you're looking at violence and aggression against Jews as if it defines everything, as if it's all that matters. And then I stepped back and said, this level of violence and incitement against any group by any group would never have been accepted ever since the civil rights movement, but certainly not in the modern era. This is why this isn't just about the Jews. Okay, never mind the other thing. You know the other thing. What starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. In fact, Hamas has said out loud, when we're done with the Jews, we're coming for the Christians. Nobody wants to listen to what the terrorists are actually saying, besides the fact that they want to destroy the West. Okay, that's a given. But let's pretend, Andrew, let's pretend that 100% of the hate in the world and the aggression and the violence, 100% of it was just against the Jews. That doesn't make it any less important than any aggression or any violence that is consuming a society.
Yeah.
That's what Jewish lens.
But we were talking about Charlie Kirk, and I don't hugely see what that has to do with the Jewish issue.
It has to do with the fact that when I'm saying, because this whole thing started when I texted you some very enraged messages about the left. And you said, yeah, well, the right has its problems too, which I'm getting in my latest Substack. If you click on my, there's like a black quote that I wrote on Facebook. If you click there, you can see the comments that came in, and a lot of them were the same thing. And as I wrote in that same Substack, for me to say that the left has a problem and for people to answer so does the right is like saying that oranges are round and somebody replying and saying so are tennis balls. It's not the point. My point is there is a big problem on the left. It is anti-Semitically driven, and it has to be addressed. And it's getting bigger, and they are in complete denial. Andrew, let's keep in mind, everyone in my stratosphere, not everyone, I mean, most of them have left my stratosphere, is as far left as you can imagine. Living on the west side of Los Angeles.
Mate, I live in the UK. I can imagine very far left.
Okay. So living
that feels like a challenge.
Okay, let's have this challenge because, I've got west side of LA, the most probably liberal basket of liberalism in the entire country. I have the yoga community. That's the farthest left social justice warriors that there are on earth. I have the Ivy Leaguers. We've seen the cesspool that has become. And I hate to say it, I have the Jews. What the hell is going on with the Jews who are doing insane mental gymnastics or maybe yoga? I don't know what it is to defend the terrorists that want to see us dead. But I am so entrenched in this, Andrew, that adults, like real adults, everyone keeps saying, oh, it's the indoctrination of the youth, blah, blah. It is that too. But like real live adults in my sphere, every single sphere, draw the Venn diagram, every single one of them is like Jews overreacting. We need to support the Hamas cause. They're just innocent victims, the whole thing. And so the Jewish thing is, and everybody's saying, I mean, Charlie Kirk actually, we haven't seen anything about this in any manifesto, but he was pro-Israel, and we don't know if that had any sort of contributing factor in this violent and vile assassination. But we have seen in the other recent violent and vile assassinations that Free Palestine, aka Global Intifada, was the motivating factor.
Yeah, certainly in Washington, D.C. with those two staffers. And then there was the Colorado incident as well. And I think there was one more, wasn't there, in California,
Well,
if I'm not wrong.
I mean, even
I
the
think there was
guy.
an old man in California, am I right?
Yes, that was last year. That was a little different. That was I don't I will say that they did not mean to kill him, but he was at a rally and they knocked him over.
Yeah.
But the guy who shot up the Catholic school, I mean, that was a little weird, but he had written all over his gun, 6 million wasn't enough, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, Colorado but even so let's get back to the non-Jew haters and just the far left. I mean, what happened when Luigi Mangione killed Brian Thompson? Not only was there the same celebration from the left as we saw so horrifyingly with what happened with Charlie Kirk last week, but they actually raised millions of dollars in this guy's defense. I will be shocked if we don't see the same thing happen with the guy who just assassinated Charlie Kirk. This is the problem.
It depends. It depends which side he turns out to be on, I suspect. Do you know what? I am going to throw a third option in, and that's the mental illness one. I do wonder if there's a mental illness piece to this. That's just my instinct. I don't have any evidence or proof. It's just an option I'm throwing out there. But going back to your point, you're talking about.
I have to say something about mental illness really quickly, Andrew. I'll just take one sentence. Anybody who does anything like this is mentally ill. Hard stop. So it's a much higher bar than that.
But there's a kind of legal threshold as to whether you're fit to stand trial. I was kind of being a bit more technical about it, but yeah.
Well, it's going to be technical.
I don't know. Some people, was Hitler mentally ill, or was he just pure evil?
But there was extraordinary premeditation.
There are genuinely evil people out there. Were Hamas just mentally ill on 7th of October, or were they just pure evil? You know, I think there is more of a line to that. But anyway, let me finish. No, you've been ranting at me for 10 minutes. No, my turn. So going back to a point that we made about 10 minutes ago, you were saying something about tennis balls and oranges. And, you know, I, however, would contend that these two things, the two drifts to the extremes, are symbiotic. I think they're symbiotic. You didn't get this under previous conflicts. You've always had fringes. Everyone has. Every country has their nutters, their political, flanks. But I think at the moment, because almost the extremes are now the leaders of the respective groups, be Trump on one hand or whoever is the Democrat leader who you want to, would it be Pelosi or whoever? I lose track. It's not. It's what's his name, isn't it? Schumer.
It's probably Schumer right now.
Yeah, it's Schumer, who is not doing well with the Jewish community, as I understand it, from my good buddy Elliot. He tells me that his Judaism is not strong like the Jedi at the moment. But the the fact that you do have very extreme positions at the very top of these organizations that once upon a time could sit down and have a cup of tea together. That was always a feature where you could, and then you look at the debate between Biden and Trump last time. It was on my birthday, and I was in Phoenix, Arizona, watching it just before I went out to a concert in the evening. And I was just like, what the hell? How are these two idiots your best possible candidates? Like, there's 360 million Americans or whatever it is, and these are the two clowns you're putting forward?
Yeah.
No wonder these extremes are getting out of control if that's the representation at the very top of your two main political parties. So I do think there is a symbiosis between these. As one, there's always a reaction and counter-reaction. And we're seeing that already after Charlie Kirk with some of the rhetoric that's coming out of the White House. And I'd imagine if they do try and clamp, just today they were talking about clamping down on organized violent leftism, which is like, like the whole point of anti, and I've got friends who are tangentially studying this, and like these things are not as well organized as you'd like. Where the organization is coming from is the overseas influence. That's the stuff you can crack down on. But that's what we've just agreed is not left wing at all. It's extremist jihadism, which is neither left nor right because it's socially conservative and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we're already seeing that rhetoric emerge, and I can imagine that if there is a crackdown, then that will encourage yet more violence and extremism on the ones being cracked down on. So and then there'll be more crackdowns. So it's just going to keep climbing and escalating. So I think, conclusion, there is a symbiosis. They don't operate in a vacuum independently.
Okay, sorry for forgetting. So, sometimes I do. Here's the thing, Andrew. When you say that the Islamic jihadists are far right, that's absolutely true. But they've only intoxicated the far left.
Yeah, bizarre, isn't it?
By the way, I do want to say that all of the rational far right people, like I'm thinking of people like Ben Shapiro or
I don't think we can call Ben Shapiro far right.
You don't think he's far right?
Far right. No, he's a right winger, but he's not far right.
Okay. All I want to say is that a lot of the people on the significant right are denouncing the Tucker Carlsons and the what's your names of the world. So
Candace Owens, yeah.
Candace Owens. There is an awareness of the right, of the problems on the far right. We're not seeing that reckoning on the left. Now, I do want to say, as an American voter, I can't remember the last time that I didn't vote for the lesser of two evils. So that, like, every time since I've been an adult, pretty much, I'm like, really? This is the two people that the world's greatest nation, I think we're the world's greatest nation, has to offer.
You used to be. You used to be, and then January 2020 happened, and then 2024 happened. So, 2025, January 2025 happened, and you've just dropped yourselves off a cliff. But hey, that's your business. That's your business.
It's amazing when I say that these are the top two. I do want to say one thing about the insanity plea, which is that there was an amazing amount of premeditation that went into the attack, which proves that he was of right mind, or you can't put together having the rifle in your leg and the jumping and the running and the places. And so from what I'm hearing, that insanity plea has no chance beyond the fact that all criminals that do something that sick are insane. I do.
So with that, I meant the kind, you know, when you get celebrity fixations.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by the mental health thing. Okay. I was like, you know, maybe he was just utterly obsessed with Charlie Kirk, and you know, like like the guy who shot Reagan was obsessed with Jodie Foster, wasn't he?
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, something like that. Yeah, so fit to stand trial and calculating, but motives were perhaps not screwed down.
I'm too young to remember things like that, Andrew.
When you were talking about the elections you voted in, I was like, well, did you vote for Taft or not? I don't know.
No, but I did vote for Roosevelt. The thing I wanted to point out, if you want to see something really fascinating, Michael Douglas, the actor Michael Douglas, probably a decade ago now, made a video that showed bipartisan resolutions in the Congress from, I think, like, say, the 70s till today. And what he did was he had like two lines and he drew like a rainbow from, not a rainbow, but like a little curve to the other each time there was bipartisan legislation. And back then, it like fills up the whole screen because it used to be that our Congress cared about our country. Last year, we had something like 10 or 12 bipartisan resolutions in all of Congress because they don't care about the country anymore. They care about their jobs, and that's it. So much respect for people like Fetterman and Richie, who are like, you know what? Richie Torres, sorry. Who are like, you know what? If standing up for what I know is right is going to cost me my job, then hell with it. I'm here. I have the power. I'm going to talk about the things that need to be talked about and hope that the people who need to hear it listen. So.
Yeah, I'm enjoying some of the comments tonight. There's a really interesting one actually from another yogi, I'm assuming, Yoga Shalom Shanti. Have you ever lived in a part of America other than New York or California? The perception of left and right is very different depending on where you live. And I would agree with that. I found coastal America utterly a million miles different to places like Georgia or Tennessee or Indiana or Kansas. Like, it's almost like a different country when you go to those Midwest and Deep South kind of states. It's really fascinating how you can change so much. Because like you could go in the UK and, if you went to Brighton, you'd find a bit of an unusual kind of New Yorky vibe about far left. Bristol's quite far left, Liverpool is, but the rest of the country, you could drive from north to south and you're recognisably still in the same country with the same people who have broadly the same spread of views. That's totally different in the States, which is fascinating. Like flyover states are where it's at for me. That's my favourite bit of America, without any question of a doubt. It's all about the
Ironically,
flyover states.
yeah, ironically speaking, you've spent more time in those states than I have. The answer for me is I grew up here in Southern California. I went to Cornell, which is in upstate New York. So that's New York and it's Ivy League. So again, it's that whole like left side dumpster fire, craziness. But I can tell you that as a yoga instructor, I've taught at over 200 studios around the world. I always think of going to Europe like when I travel, it just feels like the Holocaust tour of Europe. Everywhere I go, there's like a remembrance of the Holocaust, which is very, very, I could feel it is palpable when I'm there, even when I talk about yoga students about being Jewish. Did I not talk about it? Mention I'm Jewish. I went to Israel, whatever. Like, and I'm not talking about post 10/7. Like the anti-Semitism there is real. But here in America, I've taught hundreds of, if not thousands of workshops across the country. And there definitely is a very different vibe in the middle of the country. The problem is we have a blue wall on the right and the left that makes it impossible for anything to switch sides, which gives the Democrats automatically a supermajority. But, well, not a supermajority, a strong footing everywhere they go. And somebody said, what about Arizona? The fact is, I actually do have family in Scottsdale. And one of those is one of the people on Facebook who ripped me a new one. Because when you go to the big cities, all the big cities in America, even in the middle, they are left. They are far left. And if anybody, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing like the full comments here, but somebody's saying something about ahimsa. And if you want to talk about ahimsa, which Andrew means nonviolence, look at the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita states very, very clearly that when your family is in threat, and particularly existential threat, it's not your choice, but your duty, your responsibility to defend them. So if you want to talk about loving kindness, war is a necessary evil. Terrorism is not.
I wonder if we've touched on what could be part of the problem here is that there are so many different Americas, and the left and the right actually aren't that exposed to one another.
Mm-hmm.
If you spent your life in one of the coastal cities, can you really get inside the headspace of someone who lives in Arkansas or Mississippi? And I've driven through both of those states. You can drive up the Mississippi Delta, you go through Montgomery and Birmingham, and it is so palpably poorer than places like places like the northeast of the states, or even
Yeah.
kind of even other big cities. Obviously there's huge poverty in some of the cities as well, but the homelessness problem and stuff like that really stands out. But you can see the quality of life is that much lower in those poorer states. And I wonder if that is perhaps where the conversation breaks down, because it's almost too big to have that conversation in an era when we're all interconnected. So you're having people conversing and having debates kind of online where they'd have never met in another life. If this had been the 1940s or 30s, they would never have met each other at all. And yet now these people with very disparate worldviews and disparate life experiences are now conversing and finding that they don't actually like each other very much. I wonder if that's potentially part of the problem. I'm just theorizing. I'm not saying it is the case. I'm just wondering if it might be.
I'm laughing at the word conversing because the problem is it's not conversing. When I get comment, right, from people who disagree with them, they're not respectful. They're not conversational. They're just tearing me down. And I'm going to go ahead and defend myself that I have never gone trolling on anybody else's page who's saying things that I disagree with to write incendiary things on their page. That's their page. They're allowed to say what they want to. And if I say something, I always try to be respectful and say, I respectfully disagree, but people are being aggressive. So I don't think conversation is exactly the right word.
Interlocution, maybe is the word. I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem with social media is that we're all like being put into echo chambers, and the only people who are going out are the people who really want to argue, the people who really want to create a fight, the people who really want to incite things. But I'll tell you something interesting, Andrew, because I grew up in Orange County, California, which, believe it or not, used to be considered the single most Republican district in America. And now it's as far left as any. So I have seen both parts of the world. If you look at my Cornell yearbook, this was so random. I don't even know why I turned to that page, but I was in the Young Republicans. I was the Speaker of the House. I don't even remember. I remember being in the Model Congress. I do not remember being in the Young Republicans, but I grew up all Republican family, Republican neighborhood, Republican everything. And now I'm like in the other world. So I do understand how both sides think. And I have family members who are entrenched in both sides.
Yeah, and of course, social media. I wrote about the psychology of this the other day. Social media just takes the filter. Say again?
It was a terrific article.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So for those people who don't know, I also did a master's in psychology as well as war studies, and so I wheeled that out the other day to write about some of the psychological elements that come into play. And one of them is essentially the removal of any filter. So you say stuff to somebody online that you would never dream of saying to their face.
Yeah.
Like never in a million years. All those human barriers to communications that we've very carefully constructed over our lives to ensure that life flows perfectly, life flows in a way that we can manage. So that there are filters on everything. So you don't walk up to someone and go, ha, you've got shit hair, and then just walk off because you get punched in the face. Like the amount of times, I mean, I'm not going to criticize anyone's hair, don't worry. But the amount of times people on X have wished death on me because they disagree with me is actually one thing that Charlie Kirk shooting did do was make me just dwell on that ever so slightly. It's like the amount of times I've had death wished on me in the last 2 years because of Israel-related stuff. I'm like, actually, in that context, that becomes slightly scary that it's so easy to make that threat. And there's a really good point. So Stephen Korn's made it, and Blah has kind of started it off, where peer groups and algorithms, psyops and disinformation everywhere, and then gaming and Discord. And this is interesting because my friend from school, best friends since we were 7 or 8 years old. We're 40 years older than that now, so we've known each other a real long time. So I trust him is the first point. But he is in that gaming world. He's done a lot of stuff on the tech side professionally, works in ethics, particularly ethics around the internet. So this is very much his area of specialism. He's doing a PhD in that. And, he was pointing out that some of the stuff that was written on the cartridges that supposedly were found, they're not only kind of alt-right memes, but they're also so niche that if you weren't introduced to them or had them explained to you, you'd never realize. Because, Bella Ciao is a renowned anti-fascist song. And yet it's been adopted by those far-right groupers, like, ironically, because it was used in, I think, a computer game of some kind, Far Cry. I think he said it was. Might have been Helldiver, I don't remember. But I don't play games, so I really have no context at all. I play Scrabble on my phone sometimes. I do that. There you go. Let's get it on. No, because you're American. You can't spell anything correctly. It'd be a nightmare.
The official Scrabble dictionary allows both British and American. I challenge you to a duel. But you just can't get mad at me when I slaughter.
But apparently we have to live stream it on Discord now, otherwise it doesn't count. And then shout alt-right memes at one another whilst we're doing it. And dress up as Peppy. But the point is, we're in an exponential area of the way technology infests our lives. You know, what came out with the Nokia 6210 back in the early 2000s is now something you literally cannot live without. Like your banking app is on your phone, your contacts, sometimes even your house keys can be on your phone now. I can dial into the cameras in my garden through my phone when I'm in a different country. It's, this is so exponential, and I don't think we're equipped as humans to deal with the lack of, or the removal of, all these social norms that have developed over decades to ensure our societies run in a smooth and less confrontational way. So it's an interesting world, and I think we're spinning into a world that we don't have the facility to properly operate in, and that's really dangerous. And that online radicalization is so dangerous.
I think we have the facility. The problem is that the people who are running our social media don't want to facilitate it. When I report somebody who tells me you're next, Jew, that doesn't go against their terms of service. When I have somebody who calls me, a Zionist baby killer, that doesn't go against their terms of service. When somebody, it doesn't matter, go down the list. So it's not that we don't have the facility, it's that nobody's facilitating it. But I do want to make a point about the gaming, because I remember it's not just gaming, it's our movies and our media and our books and everything. I remember when I was whenever, what was it? Was it Harry Potter? Like when it started getting super violent? Or, oh no, it wasn't. It was one of the Lord of the
Super violent Harry Potter. This is a new one.
Have you know how much murder there is of children but whatever. It wasn't that. It was actually on Lord of the Rings, something, whatever, I think. Or Hobbit. It doesn't matter. Lots of things being killed with like heads chopping off.
Something fantasy nonsense-y. Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't take them, by the way, but I went with my little tiny nieces and nephews who are all in college or graduated college now. And wherein I thought I was going to vomit, and I was so appalled that my children were being exposed to this. They were like they just thought it was the most amazing thing. The level of desensitization of violence and of playing games of blowing people up, and the graphics of the blood and the heads and the things, this is not. I'm somebody who, I literally don't even believe in toy guns, not even the ones with marshmallows or water in them, because I think that this whole process of making shooting fun, that somebody with the wrong, whatever, Call of Duty decides that his Call of Duty is to shoot a commentator in the carotid artery. I do believe that gaming, social media, movies, entertainment, all of it is desensitizing especially our youth against this violence.
Do you know what? I went to give a speech in a school once about the army. So I went in uniform and showed some cool photos, and like that one, little jump out of a helicopter, all that sort of stuff. And I took questions, and one of these little kids was just like, "What's it like, when you actually, get to shoot someone? Is it awesome?" I was like, "Holy shit!"
Right.
And I was like, "Well, they're normally shooting at you, and if they hit you, you go down and you don't get up again. It's not like a computer game. You don't get a regeneration. You don't go, oh damn, and try the level again. That's it. That's the end of everything. And it means that if you go down, then your friends are carrying you on their shoulders while your parents cry. And it really isn't fun at all." And this little kid was just looking at me and just you could see he couldn't put two together. It was really quite disconcerting, actually, that conversation. And I know little kids are bloodthirsty, but this was a kid where it must have been 13, 14. So sort of should have known better than that kind of pre-big school age where they kind of lose the context of reality. It was not ideal at all. So yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all.
But it's also the concept of taking joy in killing someone. That was the other half of what he was saying. Like, he was thinking, oh my God, that'd be so great to like kill people.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, I mean, listen, I'm sure that when you know you're fighting a bad guy, there's no, I've heard you speak about, you know, what has traumatized you and what hasn't traumatized you. And certainly, you know, I understand that, but I can't imagine that you actually reveled in the joy of killing anybody. And that's at the basis, I think, of what this kid was also saying that's very disturbing. Like, how cool was it? And you're like, yeah, not that cool.
Cool. Well, let's finish on an Israel point. I need to wrap things up. But
Okay.
But that is reflected in the IDF troops I went to see in Gaza. I think that's a really interesting point, that kind of the full connection hadn't occurred to me. And you said you didn't relish it when you had to do, you know, violent stuff in Afghanistan, and that's true. You'd sometimes have a quiet professionalism, a quiet satisfaction that you had done your job to a high standard and nobody had got hurt, and you'd removed some bad guys from the equation, and that was, you know, a good thing as far as we were concerned. But it wasn't like a woo, yeah. It was just a kind of, yeah, we got the job done. And you saw that in Gaza as well. I never saw, and actually Julia Hartley-Brewer saw it this week. She was in Israel. If you're not following her on Twitter, you must. Julia's wonderful. And she said she never heard negative words against Palestinians from anyone you meet in the street. Now, you do online, of course you do. There's always the kind of fringes in every country. But when I was in Gaza with 252 Division, all the soldiers I spoke to, none of them were expressing that kind of, yeah, I want to get in there and fuck up, blah, 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 blah. It just wasn't any of that. It was that quiet professionalism where you know you've got a horrible job to do, but you're going to do it really well because that's what keeps you and your friends alive. And that's the difference between real war and this play war that you see on computer games. There's nothing, you know, I've had a go at them. I've got friends who've got consoles and I'm just like, this is just boring, bores me. What is the point of this? I don't get it. It's nothing like the real thing at all. And thank goodness it's not, but what it does is it gives people a skewed image of what it's like, a skewed perspective that somehow pulling the trigger at another human is a good thing and fun. And you know, when you go to war as a soldier, you don't kill for killing's sake. You kill to achieve your mission and achieve the strategic goals that your politicians have set you. Eventually, you should be able to draw a line between pulling the trigger and what your politician said back home. If you can't do that, then something's gone wrong. So it's a far, far different prospect to a computer game. And yeah, I think that's my final point for the day. And I'll go to you for your concluding remarks.
My concluding remark, I was going to say something different, but I'm just going to stack up what you just said, which is Golda Meir had a famous quote, which I will certainly butcher and that anybody could look up. But she said, I'm not angry that you are killing my children. I'm angry that you're forcing my children to kill yours. And that is, in a nutshell, the Jewish values that guide the IDF. And again, I'm not saying there's no people in the IDF who might have some nefarious, ideals, but you also have to understand where they're coming from. In the shadow of 10/7, we really need to understand that the world has changed. The world has changed. We're facing this. Okay, now I have to go, and I won't make this long, I promise. But we're just a few sentences that we're facing this, and I don't use this term lightly, but this Nazi level like normalization of anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic attacks. And here's the thing that bothers me is that even those who, like me, vehemently oppose it, unlike me, they're sort of accepting it as the new normal. Like, oh, well, let's just get more security. That's not the answer. This is not normal. This is not okay. It needs to be called out. It needs to be eradicated, whether it's on the left, whether it's on the right. L'chaim, that's my last word.
That's it. Well, thank you for joining us today. Look, what you get with Shana and I is basically two friends talking, and we don't necessarily agree with each other, but we try and set a tone that's respectful and listens to the other person's point of view. And actually, I think the way we do that gets us to a pretty shared conclusion. So that was certainly a 45, 55 minutes that I really enjoyed. I'm really glad you could join us as well. We do this every Monday, same time, same place. And until next time, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all the things. We're also on YouTube and wherever you find podcasts. So if Substack's your thing, awesome. If it's not, you could find us anywhere. See you soon.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.